Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I would like to welcome Dr. Penny Kuntz. She is a licensed clinical psychologist with over 30 years of experience providing services to individuals with mental health concerns. Her primary area of clinical interest and research is geropsychology and the mental health concerns of the aging population, particularly those who reside in rural and marginalized areas and face significant barriers to accessing care. She hails from West Virginia and has spent her entire career serving individuals in the Appalachian region. She received her doctorate in clinical psychology from Marshall University and now trains and supervises psychology doctoral students as an associate professor in the psychology department at Marshall. She is also the director of the Campus Psychology Clinic, which offers psychotherapy and psychological evaluation to members of the campus community and to members of the larger regional community. And in 2022, Dr. Kuntz was named co-director of the Marshall University Center for Healthier Aging Initiatives in Appalachia, a center of excellence. Thank you for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Kuntz.
Thank you so much for having me this morning, and good morning, everyone. So we will be talking today about community engagement with older adults. We're going to talk about the whys and the hows of how to do that. I'm also going to spend some time this morning talking with you about the Aging Center, the new Marshall Aging Center, and also talk with you about some research that I recently completed. So just to kind of kick things off, thinking about community engagement with older adults, I think it might be helpful to kind of put this in perspective and think about some of the whys of why is it important? Why is it vital for Marshall University and for we as residents to become involved with the community and with older adults in our community. So let's put some numbers in perspective. How has our older adult population changed over time? So you can see that in 1920, okay, which is not that long ago, to be honest, 100 years ago, 1920, there were about in terms of adults in the U.S., 65 and older, there was about 5 million of that age group in the U.S. And that translated at that time to about 4.5% of the total U.S. population. Now let's fast forward to 2020, 100 years later, and look at some information that we gained from that most recent census. This age group population had increased to roughly 56 million and is now about 17% of the total population. That age group represents a growth rate of over 1,000%, which is almost 5 times that of the total population growth rate in the U.S. Further, the decade between 2010 and 2020, the most recently completed decade, saw the largest ever 10-year gain, with the first of the baby boomer generation, go baby boomers, hitting age 65 in 2011. And in the literature, you will often see this trend or this movement toward aging called the graying of the U.S. And that population expansion will continue for several decades as the baby boomer cohort continues to age and move into that age group. Looking a little closer to home, the 2020 census also showed us that the percentage of older adults residing in West Virginia was a little over 21%, which is about 25% higher than the national percentage. So where the U.S. Overall percentage is 17%, in West Virginia, we are over 21%, or roughly 1 in 5 individuals living in West Virginia is age 65 or older. We have the third largest percentage of older adult residents in West Virginia. We're behind Maine and Florida. And it's projected that West Virginia's older adult population will increase to about 30% by 2030, or roughly 1 in 3 residents in West Virginia will then be age 65 or older. So the first why is pretty simple, really. The number of adults, older adults in our communities is much higher than ever before, which means that there is a greater need for services. So let's think about some characteristics when we also are sort of considering, why is this important? Why is this urgent? Because where you age matters. Don't misunderstand, and this discussion, I'm not in any way implying that older adults are a homogeneous group, that they, because we know that older adults are just like younger adults. There is great heterogeneity among older adults, great diversity among older adults. But we can look at trends and look at different areas and look at trends within those specific areas. So what are the factors in the literature that older adults report as being necessary for healthier aging? And those are known as the social determinants of healthier aging. These are the factors or the aspects of aging that older adults most commonly cite as ones that are critical to healthy aging. Health and health care. So good access to health care is very important. That, and actually economic concerns are often, you will see them as number 1 and 2 in terms of what older adults report. Also important, my neighborhood and the environment that is built around me. And so that includes my residence, where I live. Do I have stable housing? Is my housing safe? Is my neighborhood safe? Do I feel connected? Do I have attachments to people in my neighborhood? And is my city also safe and welcoming to older adults? And so those things are very important as we age. Our socialization and our community context. Do we have opportunities to socialize with other people? Do we have connectedness to family? Do we have connectedness to friends and to social groups and aspects, institutions within our community? Education, which I cannot say enough how wonderful I think this group is in terms of the lifelong learning aspect. Older adults indicate that that is very important to them in terms of healthy aging, opportunities and access to lifelong learning. And also economic and policy issues, also very important. The sad fact is that where one lives, in the literature, it's actually called zip code risk, because we see different mortality rates and different morbidity rates in different zip codes. And we know that actually where you live is a greater indication of your health and lifespan than your own genetic code. Now that I think really puts into context the urgency of making our community welcoming and safe for older adults. That's a fact of the American story. We all don't line up equally at the starting line. Where we live, where we're raised, has an awful lot to do with how we age. And these 5 major determinants of health line up with what people say they want, with what people say they need, and what they seek out for fulfillment as we age. So if we want to do well at doing good for older adults, these factors are very important. Let's speak to sort of the rural aspect of aging and what that adds to the equation. Older adults living in rural West Virginia, rural Ohio, and Kentucky are aging in small communities with declining population, geographically isolated, inadequate transportation systems, high rates of poverty, and food insecurity. The consequences of those factors is an increased vulnerability to multiple physiological health conditions and disorders. Things like vulnerability to poor nutrition and malnutrition, diabetes, obesity, hypertension, cardiovascular disease. And we all know that West Virginia has higher than average rates of those disorders, physiological disease processes, than is present in the US in total. In turn, what that often creates is an environment where conditions such as excess disability occurs, a self-reported lower quality of life, and mental health concerns such as depression, anxiety, accelerated cognitive decline, and substance use. And those issues all put together really create a drain in our communities. It's hard to support businesses when you don't have people with discretionary money to spend, and the economy in the communities go sideways. And that creates this cycle of declining population and isolation. So the second why, also pretty simple. The need is so great. And really, Marshall University is in the perfect position to partner with communities to assist in meeting these challenges that we're talking about. So what are the benefits of community engagement for older adults? There are numerous, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, but the research clearly indicates that there are tremendous benefits of community engagement for the older adult population. A study, large study completed last year, 2022, by the National Institutes of Health, supported the notion that older adults who have a higher frequency of community engagement tended to report higher life satisfaction and well-being, a more general positive mood, so an increase in their mood, fewer depressive symptoms, and most older adults, as we know, particularly in Appalachia, prefer to age in place in their own homes rather than in aging facilities or institutions. And so community engagement also supports that, because active community participation helps to foster that increased sense of belonging that we have in our community and community attachment. It also promotes continued functionality. That is, sometimes even when we don't necessarily feel like doing something, either physiologically or emotionally, sometimes knowing that we have in community engagement opportunities is the push to continue our functioning to a greater degree, getting out in the community. It definitely improves our opportunities for socialization, being with other people. Also, older adults report that their subjective well-being is greater when they're engaged with the community. And finally, it really supports the desire for aging in place and being able to do that with greater community support. So the final why really is that communities engagement promotes healthier aging, higher life satisfaction, and greater well-being for older adults. So the whys really, if you think about it, are just simple but really critical. The number of older adults in our community is much higher than we've ever seen before. The needs are great in our communities because of the zip code risk that we all face, and the benefits to community engagement for older adults are just outstanding and support healthier aging and aging in place. So that is the why of community engagement, as I believe the research supports. So if I can, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes and talk with you a little about the Center for Healthier Aging Initiatives in Appalachia. The center really began to form in early 2022. So it's a very new initiative here at Marshall. We're kind of the baby of the centers of excellence that are emerging on campus. So it is very much formed as a faculty-driven initiative. Faculty from different departments came together, a small group initially, to discuss the need for Marshall University to be more committed and active in the community related to matters of aging and meeting the needs of our older adult population. So this group now includes nearly 24 Marshall faculty that represent nearly every college, every school, and every division at the university. Education, the School of Pharmacy, the School of Medicine, psychology, dietetics, nursing, social work, communication disorders, the College of Business, the College of Fine Arts, humanities, and cybersecurity. So it is truly an interdisciplinary effort. And in 2022, the center was named our current name, the Emmy Center for Healthier Aging Initiatives in Appalachia. And Dr. Lori Howard from Education, College of Education, and I were named as co-directors. Our mission, we adopted the following mission statement. The center strives to improve the health, wellness, and quality of life of the senior citizens of Central Appalachia, especially those in isolated, low-resource communities. So we strive, again, from an interdisciplinary aspect to really provide services from a wide lens and a very wide perspective. So to carry out our mission, we really focus on 3 foundational pillars. Number 1, research. We conduct research out of the center, conducting research that leads to a better understanding of healthy aging in rural areas and in areas of low resources. So we have numerous faculty who are involved in their personal research projects. I'll tell you a little bit about a couple of those here in a minute. Our second pillar, education and training. One of our pillars is to develop a broad and diverse workforce that's sensitive to the needs of seniors aging in place in Appalachia. And we do that through a couple of different mechanisms. We provide education and training to our current Marshall students, but we also are providing training to the current workforce who is working in the communities with the older adult population to increase their competencies and their strengths in terms of providing services. And then finally, our third pillar is community engagement and service. So promoting community engagement between the Marshall community and seniors and their families. So I'll talk with you just about a few projects that we currently have going as part of the Center for Aging. In terms of research and community engagement, 4 of our faculty were awarded a grant to provide creative arts classes for older adults in 3 local senior centers and senior living centers in our community, looking at the effects of engagement and creative arts on various aspects of physical and mental health. One of our faculty is collaborating with the St. Albans Emergency Medical Services to identify ways to decrease non-emergency EMS calls for routine health concerns from older adults. The Department of Cybersecurity and the Center for Aging are collaborating on a project focused on preventing cyber scamming of older adults, and there are plans to partner with local senior centers to provide awareness talks, as well as to develop written materials on scamming dangers, specifically for older adults. 2 of our faculty are coordinating 3 wellness events in the spring of 2024 in partnership with senior centers in Cabell County, Boyd County, Kentucky, and Lawrence County, Ohio, focusing on improving nutrition and mental health. In terms of education, some of our most recent efforts, we developed a graduate certificate program in healthy aging that is housed in humanities. We have plans to develop micro-credentials for the community partners to offer their employees credentials in various aspects of aging. And then finally, one of our faculty was awarded a teaching grant, and 4 or 5 of our faculty are teaching a specialized course in the spring on healthier aging in Appalachia. And I'll briefly share a community engagement and research project that I recently completed over the span of 6 years, which is one type of research that will be generated by the Aging Center. Some of you may be familiar with the project that arose out of Cabell Huntington Hospital Senior Services called Senior Fest. Some of you may have attended those in the past and received some free health screenings. When I began teaching our geropsychology course in our psychology doctoral program, I wanted to incorporate some more hands-on opportunities for our students to be able to provide services and engage with older adults in our community. And so I called Senior Services at Cabell County and I said, how can we help? I'd like to bring my students over to Senior Fest, and we would love to offer some services. What do you currently offer in terms of mental health? And she said, we are not offering anything at this time. And so I offered to provide screening for depression, for anxiety, and for mild cognitive impairment, which is often a precursor to dementia, not always, but often. And so they welcomed us with open arms. And over the course of 6 years, we provided screenings for those mental health concerns. Our aims for that project were really twofold. We know that the need for psychologists who are competent in treating older adults is great. And so we wanted to provide that training and exposure opportunity for our students. And we also intended this as a community engagement and community service to the older adults in our community. And so we really focused on screening and talking with older adults who have mild to moderate mental health symptoms, because research tells us that those are the older adults who are least likely to seek treatment for their concerns. And so we really knew that the need was great. And so we had, I set this up as a community service, but also as a research project as well, so that we could learn information and gather some data about our older adults here in our tri-state region in terms of what they experienced with their mental health concerns. And I will let you know that every participant that we talked to received information, received feedback about their own levels of risk and their results on screening, and were provided referral to appropriate healthcare providers in the community. So we provided services to over 700, over that span, services to over 700 older adults in our community. And what we found was that our older adult population, about 24% of them endorsed symptoms consistent with mild depression, and about 4% of those met the criteria for a more severe form of depression. And so while that was less common than anxiety in the older adults we saw, it is definitely still notable. And the symptoms that they reported experienced most frequently was lack of energy, memory issues. They reported staying home more often than they really desired, decreasing activity level, and feelings of boredom. And those were the symptoms of depression that were most commonly endorsed by our participants. 40% of our older adults that we screened reported symptoms consistent with mild anxiety. And of those, 7% would meet criteria for more severe anxiety. And when we look at individual items, they indicated that worry and difficulty controlling worry and excessive worry were particularly common and problematic, and that they excessively worry and cannot control their worry at least half of the time. And then finally, we looked at mild cognitive impairment in over half, at about 57% of our participants. Half of that group, their scores were consistent with mild cognitive impairment, with a further 7% falling into the moderate to severe category of impairment. Differences were seen among age groups with mild cognitive impairment, suggesting to us that severity differs based on age. And so the correlation there is that as we age and get older, increasingly older, that our risk for developing mild cognitive impairment increases. And that's consistent with previous research findings too in the literature. Now, what is noteworthy about all of these numbers is that the prevalence of anxiety, depression, and cognitive impairment reported by the older adults in our sample were higher than in prior research examining the prevalence of those concerns in other community dwelling seniors. And so our belief is that this is consistent with the challenges that older adults face living in areas that are marginalized, rural, under-resourced. And because of those factors, we believe that we are experiencing what they again call in the literature that zip code risk. Okay. That is frankly my big why when I think about whys and why I am interested in from a clinical perspective, from a research perspective, why I am most interested in geropsychology, because I know the challenges that older adults in Appalachia face in the aging experience. So now you know the whys. Let's talk just for a moment about the how. How do we engage? How do we become involved in the community? Number one, identify a need. Not within your own silo. And that, frankly, is how education in particular has operated for way too long. My department is siloed from another department and from another department and from another college. And so none of us really knew what other departments were doing, what other individuals were doing in terms of education, research, and community engagement with this population until we all came together. And so identifying the needs, not within just your own area of expertise, but as part of a larger group. Think about collaborating. Think about getting involved with agencies that provide services to older adults, and talk to older adults. What do you believe are your needs in your community that would promote healthier aging for you and for your friends and your family? The Center for Aging will be actually, it's a big project that we're doing in the spring. We are conducting a needs assessment in our region. We are planning to conduct focus groups with older adults. We're planning to also survey older adults through agencies that provide services for them. We're also going to be surveying agencies, providers, physicians, mental health professionals, a wide range of individuals, and asking individuals in our particular region, what are your needs for healthier aging? So we don't want to make assumptions that we know what all of those things are, because we know that our area is unique, and we know that our older adults have specific needs based on our community. And so identify that need. That's the first how. Next, consider your own experiences and areas of expertise. Think about how those can translate into a community engagement project. What experiences have I had that make me uniquely qualified or make me a great fit for a particular area of need? And what expertise can I bring to that area? How can I become involved and translate those into benefits for my community? Next, consider how can this project provide an educational opportunity for you and perhaps for others? How can it increase my competence? How can it be a part of that lifelong learning experience that I'm committed to? And how can it provide an educational opportunity for others that I may be working with? You can share your experiences, share your expertise, and help others learn and become more capable and more competent. Then partner with others, both within and outside your area of expertise. Join with others, plan with others, get involved with groups, get involved with projects, not just ones in which you have expertise or experiences, but with other groups as well outside your area of expertise. And that will also increase your competence. Consider how you will measure outcomes. What am I contributing? And how do I know that I am meeting the need and that my group is meeting the need? And then finally, get involved. Jump in. If you see a need, if you see a group who is committed to fulfilling a need and meeting a need and being a part of promoting healthier aging in our communities, jump in. Ask how you can help. See what can you do, and then offer to do it. So those are really the hows, and those are really the steps within the Center for Aging that we are trying to adopt in terms of meeting our mission, working within our foundational pillars of research, community engagement, and education, and improving the lives of older adults in our community. So that is really what I prepared for you today, and I would be happy to have some discussion or answer any questions that you might have.
Unmute, Freddie,
Sheila.
unmute. Unmute, Freddie. Unmute.
There.
Here you
There
go.
we are.
Dr. Koontz, thank you so much.
You're
I feel
welcome.
I've stumbled on an oasis here.
Oh, great.
Is there a physical location for the center?
No, no, there isn't yet.
Is there a website?
There is a website, but put on your hard hat when you go there, because it is still very heavily under construction.
Okay.
So we are how shall I say this? We have not received funding for full operational costs. And so for most of the faculty, well, all of the faculty who are involved with the center, this is a side gig. And so we are, and it's astounding to me, the commitment and the investment and the effort that our faculty have put into the center, with it being a side gig. And so we don't have the brick and mortar yet, and we are looking for funding opportunities. We have plans to apply for a large HRSA grant that is really education focused, that will provide some really good funding for developing more educational initiatives, and for sending students out into the community to provide some services, and developing some micro credentials and things like that. So we are looking for funding for that. We received funding for the creativity and aging project that we're currently doing, but we are always on the lookout for funding that will support our initiatives. And so that is really why we don't have a brick and mortar at this point, and why we are kind of doing our website on our own. So be kind when you look at our website and know that it's a work in progress, but it is there.
I'll go back into depression if I look at it.
We don't want that. We don't want that.
Just one other comment, and then I'll stop. I was prone to anxiety,
Mhm.
and I discovered meditation and mindfulness.
Yes, yes.
And I've been doing that for 3.5 years, and it's been such help.
Wonderful. That's great. Yeah, definitely. We teach that as an evidence-based treatment in our doctoral program, and the research is pretty clear on the benefits of practices, including mindfulness meditation and other forms, actually, of yoga and other practices. So yes, good for you. Congratulations on that.
Recommend it to everybody.
Yes, it's a great practice.
Um,
Yes, Dr. Wilson.
Yeah, just a couple of maybe observations that may be a little joined together, but it seems like that from what you kind of generally have said is that the socioeconomic challenge has to be great. I think about us in lifelong learning in this particular program that we're a part of. And we, we have struggled and trying to grow in relation to what it means for people to learn and to have lifelong learning, to feel fulfilled. I think that's been the goal and the wonderful aspect of the Marshall lifelong learning. But we face the challenges, just like I think and generally about an aging population, about being able to get there, whether or not they want to get out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But so I'm just saying that I just kind of weave all that into socioeconomic, because there are some of us that because of our economic ability, we can take part in things. And I think about, I've been ill for the last 4 to 5 months, and it was cardiac. It's cardiac related, but I went into severe depression and anxiety as a result of my cardiac situation.
Yeah.
Not to belabor that, but I'm 23 years a patient of the Cleveland Clinic, and with heart failure, with cardiomyopathy, pacemaker, and all that. Thus far, the identification is that was the trigger for the chemistry change in my brain. But it's been quite an experience. But I'm so thankful that all of a sudden I was able to get mental health help. Yes. And I haven't minded recently about talking about it. But I just wonder, in the aging population, that's a real struggle.
It is.
That's a real struggle, economically as well as just social wise or whatever.
It is. It is.
Oh.
Unfortunately, there still remains a degree of stigma around the idea of mental health concerns and receiving care for those, health care for mental health concerns. And so I talk about that a lot in my courses. I talk about that a lot in our meetings, and about the effect that stigma, and I will also include ageism, the bias that our healthcare system has toward older adult patients, and the assumptions that they make about healthcare, and for older adults, results in all of these healthcare discrepancies. For older adults, you see tremendous differences and disparities in terms of healthcare based on age. And so I know it's a tremendous struggle, and I really applaud you for sharing your struggles. It means a lot in terms of diminishing that stigma and promoting an increased awareness that people do struggle with mental health concerns as we age, but that there is help available for that. And our struggle sometimes is unnecessary because there is help available for us. And so I really applaud you for sharing that. Thank you.
Well, and I just really appreciate the fact that this center has, an underlying concern about the, what is Appalachian and what is, the socioeconomic issues and the isolation issues and all that. I mean, because that's, but there again, I think, that's kind of a teeter-totter to trying to. Thank you so much for your good work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Dr. Wilson, I'm just glad you're better and back with us. We've missed you.
I'm getting there.
Good.
Not 100% yet, but I'm there. I'm getting there. As my wonderful therapist, who's a doctor of psychology from Marshall, said, there's markers. You just keep picking the markers and moving forward, and that's what I've been doing.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Wonderful.
I'd like to congratulate Dr. Koontz and her faculty group for what they're doing, and just I can't help but mention that I used to teach at Marshall. I was in the Department of Communication Studies, worked with Dr. Howard. She's amazing also.
Wonderful,
And knew you
wonderful.
too from various committees, Dr. Coons.
Thank you.
But when you listed the disciplines that were involved in this group, I didn't hear anyone from communication studies. I retired in 2020, and since I've left, there's been a lot of turnover in the department.
Mhm.
So I don't know if anyone is there now who is real involved in interpersonal communication, who might be a valuable contributor to your work. The last semester I was there, I taught a special topics graduate seminar in communication and aging. And it came from my observations of my parents who died actually while I was teaching there. And the challenges we had talking to doctors, interactions among the lower scale providers, the hands-on people who didn't really understand how to talk
Yeah.
to their patients or charges,
Yeah.
and more importantly, how to listen to them.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So anyway, there might be a communication component, and Lori and I talked about that from time to time about a project, what we might do. So
That would
I
be
really wish you well
lovely.
with that.
Thank
It's
you.
so important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gilpin. And I will reach out perhaps to the chair of communication studies and just kind of, provide her him or her some information about the center, just to see if she might know someone in the department that would be interested in joining us.
And there might be graduate students
Yes.
who
Yes.
need a thesis focus or
Yeah.
something, who have a
Yes.
particular interest. I don't know. I'm just
Mhm.
too long gone to know what's happening there. I don't even know the new chair.
Okay.
He's new this year.
Okay.
But anyway,
Thank you so much for
oh,
that.
thank you for
Appreciate that.
pursuing this. And I know
Thank
how
you.
frustrating it is to be a program without a
Mhm.
budget, a
Mhm.
landing place to store
Yes.
materials to meet and everything. So
It is. It
best
is.
of luck to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, what you're talking about with your parents really resonated with me. My father, he's now passed, but I remember taking him to physician's appointments after the point where he no longer was safe to drive, and the physician would direct all of the questions about his health to me. And I was constantly saying to providers, please ask him. He is more than capable of answering those questions for himself. And he has more information about that than me and knows his body better than I do. So please direct your questions to him. And, it was so demeaning.
Yes.
Yeah. So demeaning. And it just made my heart hurt when they would do that.
One place I had very good experience, and there may be somebody at the VA who could contribute to, but the primary person, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, that I would go in with my dad, and she would look him right in the eye, take his hand, talk to him. And if dad would say something that seemed a little, she would look up over his head to me for confirmation. Does that sound right? And I could go.
Right. No, that's not right. That's not
Because
right.
sometimes he said some pretty off the wall things.
Right.
So anyway, I don't know who the contact at the VA would be, but just in terms of a training or an insight or something with your grant, there may be something there for you also.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Susan, you mentioned the the lower or a different, like clerks and registrars, people that register in healthcare and so forth. And sometimes some caregivers that are not necessarily medically trained, but I have found it interesting over the years that just kind of makes me cringe, and I've started to experience it being in my aging, that people want to treat all aged, or there's almost like there's want to treat all aged people as cutesy and babyfied, or I don't know what the better word would be. And when I was a pastor years ago, one of this wonderful woman in our congregation, quite a trained individual and a highly respected individual in business and so forth. And I watched a staff person at a registration desk with her just treat her like she was just a child. It's that, and I know that's ageism kind of stuff that's on, but I just it fascinates me. The
Well, another
need,
problem, excuse me, go ahead.
no, just the need for that kind of awareness and training.
A thing that I saw too, and this is, I don't know if this is a part of or independent of your project, is that the people who spend the most time with the clients or patients, however they're customers, are often the people who have the lowest paid jobs, the most physically demanding jobs, and very modest training.
Yes.
And I just would get so frustrated with the kind of thing that you're talking about. Or two people would come into the room to do something for my mom and talk to each other over her as if she wasn't even present. And in fact, she was the reason they were there to begin with. I mean, it just is some basic sensitivity. And also, as a graduate student, I did a project with one of my advisors in a nursing home about what can be done to increase a sense of self-respect and value and members of a team for people who don't have the typical markers like titles, salaries, privileges, things that elevated their sense of value to what was happening there, when in fact, without them, these places couldn't open their doors. So anyway, I'll quit preaching.
There's the thought, because we experienced with my mom, that they wouldn't look to the patient if the family wasn't there at that time to really delve into it. And my mother was in the hospital for something, and she was very weak. She couldn't even hold a fork. My mother was still strong. My mother was still very 100% cognitive. She really had her mind was so good. And I got to the hospital, and I'm like, so I had to go find someone and say, this is not my mom. My mother she's very healthy, pretty much, and she's strong, but she can't hold a fork. Oh, then they got involved because I had to put pressure, and they did a blood test, and her oxygen levels were way off, way down. And I'm thinking, what if I hadn't been there they didn't talk to my mom. She was still able to talk, and they had to put her on a CPAP, and it really scared her. She was very scared. I remember having the chaplain come in and talk to her, and she was talk about anxiety. She was not anxiety ridden in life ever at all, but she was at that point in time. And I'm thinking, what if I hadn't been there too? Because they didn't address it with her. They didn't say, I don't know. It's a hard situation. But then on the flip side, my mother would depend on me to tell the doctor what was wrong. Oh, Elizabeth knows, just, and it was just easy for me to go, blah, 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 but I do think there's that sense of looking at the other person, not the patient. I saw that. And Susan, you brought up a very, very good point with that. Freddie?
Two things. When Charles was in the hospital several years back with open heart surgery, Cheryl and I were there, and a doctor, and I suppose a resident, walked in the room, and it became apparent pretty soon that they were in the wrong room. But they stood there and talked. They never acknowledged that we were even there. 3 people. They never said, oh, sorry, or hello, or anything, and just turned around and walked out. And the second thing is, some years ago, I would go through a business and get a drink, usually iced tea. And I started to notice they were calling me honey and sweetie and dear. I wrote a letter to the manager. And
Good for
after
you.
that, everything was fine. I
Right.
mean, I used to think, when I was
Mhm.
growing up, oh, someday I'll be respected as an adult and they'll call me ma'am. Went straight to dear and sweetie.
Mhm, mhm. Right, right, right. I had a graduate student that did a project several years back looking at ageism, and we used a great scale, a great measure, and it measured what we typically think of as ageism, which is sort of that malevolent kind of ageism that older adults aren't capable, or they have certain personality characteristics that are unpleasant or things like that. But the scale also looked at the notion of benevolent ageism. And that's sort of what you were describing, Dr. Wilson, is that, older adults need my assistance, that they're not as capable as they used to be, or as cognitively capable as they used to be. And so I have to sort of baby them. And Dr. Gilpin, I think you used the term infantilize older adults. And that's that is a form of ageism, that sort of benevolent ageism that some individuals hold.
Yeah, my husband just said, what did you just say? Once?
Talk loudly.
No, you said once. And
Once an adult, twice a child.
once an adult, twice a child kind of belief. And yeah, there are a lot of assumptions like that. When I taught this class at the beginning of the semester, I collected a number of current cartoons, where the punchline was at the expense of the older person, and about what that meant and what that might have felt like. But it is, as many of you have experienced, it's frustrating to be the loved one and the unofficial in charge person of an aging parent. And what Tom and I have discovered with our experiences with our own parents, they can be living in a really nice place with people checking on them and all this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that person still needs an advocate.
Yes.
That person still needs someone who is eyes on the loved one,
Right.
who notices the changes that an overworked CNA won't see, that the overworked medical director who comes in once a month to just check on things. You still need an advocate. So, I would argue for people who are aging in place and their families, that maybe some support for family members, for how to observe, how to communicate that with primary health providers, how to be respected as a reporter and not dismissed as a bitch because you're always wanting something better. She hates peas. Why she had peas 5 times this week? I mean, to separate the critical data from the just not so critical, maybe. I don't know.
I
Well,
love
And speaking of depression, my mother had to go to a physical rehab facility and had to leave her home. And one of the nurses was very involved, and she said, "Your mother's depressed." And I said, "I agree." And I said, I had medical power of attorney. I said, "Put her on something." And she did. My mother didn't know it. She didn't need to know. I didn't want my mom to get depressed about having to take medication for depression.
Right.
But I did. I said, I agree. And that facility really cared. I was surprised at how the care that my mother got, that this one nurse really took an interest. But it's hard. But like Susan said, you have to be an advocate. You have to have an advocate. Because I think as people age, they're not as outspoken as they were when they were younger. My mother wasn't as outspoken. In her day, she was, a very strong woman, mentally and physically. And as she aged, she would look to me. She would still make her own decisions, but I had to be her advocate. And I have 2 brothers, but only daughter, she looked to me more in that role, and I was fine with it. I could handle it. But Susan, you hit it spot on. You have, for those, everyone needs an advocate.
Agreed.
Yep.
Sorry, these thoughts that coming.
That's okay.
Very early on, I put doctors on a pedestal. If they said something, that was the way it was. As I have gotten older, I really knock them off. We went to one who was very prominent at a local hospital dealing with my husband. And it was like, you can't do anything for him. I mean, he was maybe in the room 2 or 3 minutes. And I had written a letter ahead of time to him to please suggest physical therapy. He has a condition that you can't help, but physical therapy would help. And he just basically popped his head in and said a thing or two. And when Charles couldn't see me, I mouthed physical therapy to the doctor. And then he mentioned maybe some physical therapy would help you. And we paid for that. And he still is very prominent. It's just like when you get to a certain age, he's going to die of something. I can't help him. It's just they write you off. Not all of them,
Right.
but so many.
Right. Well, I think too, and that's a really good point. And I think too that as we increase our health literacy, when we know more about our own health, when we know more about appropriate health care, when we have those good and bad experiences, we read things on our own, we increase our literacy about our health care, then we feel more confident in advocating for ourselves and questioning questionable practices of some of the providers that we see. And that's a wonderful thing. Actually, health literacy is correlated with good health outcome. So the more you know about your condition, the more likely you are to have a positive health outcome.
I'm wearing out Google. Good national WebMD, the good sites. But I go in prepared.
There you go.
As I have gotten older, my filter has just totally disappeared.
When my husband
appreciate this, Dr. Koontz.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you all, and I'm just so thankful that Elizabeth reached out to me and gave me this opportunity to meet. I think this group is amazing. It's wonderful, and I'm just sitting here thinking I'm going to reach out to Elizabeth because I have some friends that I would love to see involved with your group.
We welcome new members. That's our goal, is to stay as active as we can and to keep growing. We enjoy being together. We love,
That's great.
this has been a really great conversation.
Thank you.
I think it's been very beneficial, and please, yes, we're going to have an open house next month. And if you could send me the contact information, I will personally invite them to our open
I would
house.
love to do, I will do that. Thank
And
you.
also, if you could kind of keep us abreast of this new center.
I
And
will.
when you email me, just email me the webpage and I'll send it
Okay.
out to everyone.
Okay, that would be great. I
But,
would
you
love,
know,
On the website.
yeah, I would
But-
love to do that.
we're always thinking of ways to grow and expand, and
Mhm.
we absolutely welcome new members.
Thank you.
And,
That's-
you know, I took over just 3 months before COVID hit, and we were strong. We're still strong. And then we went straight to Zoom, and we did real well with Zoom.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of our group because Zoom can be frustrating, as we know.
Mhm.
But we have still stayed together, and we're still strong. And we just have
Great.
such great friendships and relationships in this group. And I'm so thankful for this group. It's a privilege to be able to lead this wonderful group of people. So
That's great. That's excellent. Well, congratulations.
thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts or concerns before we go? We got about 5 more minutes. Well, Susan, anything? No, well, thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Koontz. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much.
And, you
It's been
know,
a pleasure.
we just want to keep working together and support
Mhm.
each other. And, you
Mhm.
know, with your initiatives, that's what we can do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And it was a pleasure meeting all of you and chatting with you today. So
Thank
have
you.
a great rest of your day.